you all on Prime Minister's meeting with the Japanese Prime Minister. I have with me the Foreign Secretary of India, Shri Vijay Gokhale, who will take you through the meeting, and after that he will also take a few questions. Sir, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. The Prime Minister arrived in Osaka earlier this morning, and his first meeting this afternoon was with the Prime Minister of Japan. As you know, Prime Minister Abe is hosting the G20 meeting. It was a very warm meeting. The two Prime Ministers are old friends, and they had a very constructive and very detailed discussion on the bilateral relationship. Prime Minister Abe initially began with the expectations from the G20 meeting. He spoke about the importance of focusing on the global economy. He referred specifically to Prime Minister's initiative at earlier G20 meetings on the issue of fugitive economic offenders, and he said that the G20 should deal with this problem as part of its anti-corruption measures. The Prime Minister of Japan also referred to the need to find appropriate situations for global trade and data flows. And he felt that the G20 should come up with a very constructive message on the issue of climate change. So these were areas that the Prime Minister of Japan hoped that he would get the understanding and support of the G20 members, including that of India. The Prime Minister of Japan also referred to his forthcoming visit to India for the annual bilateral summit. Prime Minister, of course, reiterated that invitation. And he emphasized the importance of preparing for this summit properly, including through the various ministerial meetings, through the various exchanges in infrastructure, in defense, in outer space, in the digital economy, and in startups. And obviously there was a brief discussion, time was short, but there was a brief discussion on the Mumbai-Ahmedabad high-speed railway, as well as on the convention center being built in Varanasi. And there was a brief review that the two leaders held of progress in this regard and how we could ensure that we were able to deliver both these projects on time. The Prime Minister then also mentioned that he was looking forward to seeing Prime Minister Abe again at the Eastern Economic Forum in Vladivostok in early September, where, as you know, Prime Minister will be the chief guest at the invitation of President Putin, and that the two leaders would remain in contact both on bilateral issues and on other issues. And in the context of the digital issues, the Prime Minister felt that a greater discussion between the two sides is necessary, since this is one of the big challenges and opportunities in the coming few years of the future. Prime Minister specifically appreciated the work that Japan is doing in infrastructure projects in the northeast of India. As you know, when the last summit took place, we set up what is called the Act East Forum between India and Japan. And this has had 3 meetings, and a number of projects, bridges, forestry projects, road building projects, and so on are already underway. And this was appreciated by Prime Minister. Prime Minister also said that in our neighborhood, we could look at doing projects jointly. And one of the important flagship projects that we are looking at is doing a cancer hospital jointly in Kenya. And both Prime Ministers agreed that this was something we should take forward. Prime Minister Abe also Prime Minister also then requested for Japan's support for a new initiative that he will launch later this year, and this is the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. He explained very briefly what this initiative was, and then he suggested that Japan's support, because of its experience in handling disasters, its capacity building abilities, its financial ability, because Japan has a range of experiences in management of disasters and in post-disaster rehabilitation and reconstruction, that Japan's support would be important for this important new initiative that Prime Minister and India are preparing to launch. So he sought Japan's assistance and support in this regard. Both of them then agreed that prior to his visit to India later in the year, a number of important meetings would take place, but the most important would be the first 2+2 ministerial meeting. This is a new format which was agreed to when Prime Minister visited Japan last year, in which the foreign affairs and defense ministers of the two countries will meet together and discuss issues relating to defense, foreign policy and security. So this meeting, it has been decided, will be held before the annual summit. The dates, of course, are still, that will be discussed through diplomatic channels. Finally, of course, they both observed that they would be meeting again tomorrow morning in the context of a trilateral meeting between Japan, India and the United States. And there was a brief discussion on how the Indo-Pacific Initiative, which is an important initiative which all three countries are separately pursuing and also discussing together, could be given a further fillip as part of this initiative. So these were the broad areas of discussion. It was a very warm meeting. The atmosphere was very positive. The Prime Minister of Japan is looking forward to his visit to India, and of course Prime Minister is looking forward to participating in the G20 meeting. So I will stop here now.
Thank you, sir. I'll just take maybe one or two questions. Siddharth?